You painted this in 1999 to 2000. What does that mean when you say 1999 to 2000?
That means I worked on it in 1999 and continued working on it in 2000.
Now, part of the way you work is you have to be right there on the spot.
That's correct, yeah.
So you were out there painting on the spot for months?
Over a period of months, maybe not every day.
Yes.
Maybe
yeah.
I'd go down there for a couple of days at a time. Then I'd go back to Melbourne, come back down a few days later, or even a week later, or even sometime later, and resume for a while. Back and forth like that.
Everything in the picture looks so specific. Could things be that close to how you originally saw it when you would come back over that many months?
Well, this is I don't know that there's a great deal of change in the foliage around there. There's cabbage palms and pine trees. There's not much visible change.
Yes.
I might see some of those, like I see in that painting, which is, I'm looking at that painting just over behind you. There is a long, tall, I can't remember the name of it. It's got these, I could ask somebody, but I don't.
Like a thistle or something.
It's a thistle.
Okay,
That's right.
okay.
It's a tall thistle.
Yes.
Well, that wasn't there when I started.
Yes.
But that grew there. And so there's some small changes.
Yes.
They're not like in some other environments where there's over a period of 3 or 6 months, there's a big change.
Big changes.
Noticeable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that is, it's sort of a classic thing, but that's one of the things you want. You want to paint a picture that's going to be good for the ages. I mean, it's not going to go out of style next week or 10 years from now.
Well, I think of it in terms of staying power. I want the painting to be believable. It's got to feel like it's not superficial. I work on them until there's some kind of satisfaction, and then I can walk away from it. And that might be sooner or later, and it might be different for different subjects or different paintings or different. Then in this case, it was time to walk away from it.
Well, speaking of subjects, there's one immediately actually hanging above this painting, and I should tell you that Florida pasture, for all of its depth and a number of trees and cows and everything going on in there, is only 16 inches tall by 36 inches wide, and that's one of the larger pieces in the show. So let's go now to Charlotte's at Blue Cypress, which was painted in 2008, and it's 8 inches high and 20 inches wide, and you'll see how much detail that Spence can get into a small space. And it's all very clear, and it's all very telling about the person and the place that he is in. This shows a small trailer that belonged to Charlotte Terry at Blue Cypress Lake.
Yes.
And it's a fairly commonplace scene. The trailer is not real beautiful, and there's a little chickie in the back, which might be hers or the next door neighbor's. There it is right there. And yet you really feel like you're there. I really like the way you did I think it's a natural gas tank there.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
or
the
propane.
newest looking thing in the picture.
Probably propane.
Propane, yeah. It looks so shiny and nice. Everything else has a patina of age in it. And what drew you to this particular scene?
Well, I was there. There's a group of artists from here. You might have even been there.
I have been there, not on this particular trip.
Okay, well, we went out there purposefully to that location. We're going to rendezvous out there.
Yeah.
And some people would stay there. I have a mobile home studio, a step van, and I'm not sure, but probably my wife and I stayed there overnight in the step van. And Cammie cooked up fried mullet for everybody one of those evenings.
Yes.
We all had dinner together. And the reason this painting is on 2 small 8x10 panels.
Yes.
I start them on. First of all, I started with 8x10 panels at some time because they fit neatly into my backpack, and I could go hiking out in the hills or something. In this case, I had an 8x10 panel because I thought this is something that's doable. I'm not going to make a big project out of this because it's 20 miles west of town.
Yes.
And but then one panel wasn't big enough, so I added the second one.
Did you start on the right side of the composition, the
Yes.
right panel first, which has the trailer in it?
Correct, I did.
And it probably looked just like it needed some open space on that other side, and you put it in.
I just needed to include the rest of that view in there.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, it's really nice, and I don't think that trailer is there anymore, so now it's a documentary sort of piece as well.
I suppose.
Well, let's keep on going in Florida here, and let's look at prairie, spring, rain, and fire.
Okay.
Prairie, spring, rain, and fire. It's an almost square picture at 22 by 28 inches. Actually, it looks more square than it sounds in format. And you did it in 1999 and 2000. And we were talking about this one at how deceptively simple the composition seems at first glance. And here it is coming up for everyone to see at home. And you can see the reflection of the fire, which was a controlled burn, you tell me, against the sky, and the smoke filling the sky. It's really a very romantic painting.
This view is the St. Johns River Prairie, west of Palm Bay.
Okay.
And at the lower right, beyond the cabbage palms that are out there, is what was once considered the headwaters for the St. Johns River, Lake Helen Blazes.
Okay.
Now we know that the water actually begins down here at Blue Cypress Lake and flows north.
Oh, okay.
To across, and that prairie, when I was a kid, that prairie was underwater most of the time.
They've since dug canals and things to drain it?
That's right, housing development and drainage. And now there's a levee there to an attempt to retain the floodwaters. And I was working on top of that levee.
Yes.
That was my viewpoint. So.
And the fire must have started at some point during your painting session.
Yeah, fortunately, it remained stormy like that for a couple of weeks. And at some point on the far side of the St. Johns, over there towards Kenansville, over that direction somewhere, somebody said that might be the Kempfer Ranch over there. They burn pasture in the spring, and they have cow pastures right to the
So that was, sort of fortunate that they decided to do it while you were there working. And you put these things in as they arise.
Correct.
It's not like, well, I'm going to keep on plowing ahead in the same composition. You take advantage of these things as they happen.
That's right, and that's a key thing. That's an advantageous, it's definitely advantageous to see all these things happening. If you had a photograph, it's somewhat sterile in comparison.
Exactly.
So you can see these things as they arise, and you can put them in there if you can. Of course, it takes time, and you might not, and you can't do everything.
Yeah, but each one is sort of a little compression of time. Actually, it's like a book chapter, you know, that if you keep reading it, you can see the process of the artist and how long he must have been there to get all these things in.
I guess
You think
that's right.
so?
Uh-huh.
You think so?
Mhm.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that is especially evident in your painting. It's also another Florida one, and it's the view of Melbourne. And I think we were talking about things changing, and things don't always change for the better.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes things happen that you might not show in your artwork. And in this one, you showed it in a title or in a subtitle that's inscribed right on the frame.
Yes.
And it is a view from a distance of the Melbourne skyline, and the little legend that's carved into the frame says, "Close by, dead dolphin from the polluted, dying Indian River lagoon." And this one was done in 2013.
A dead dolphin number 49
Oh my.
was pulled from the polluted, dying Indian River lagoon. While I was there working on this painting, which is right alongside the Melbourne Causeway, in fact, I believe my wife called me and said, "Hey, there's a dead dolphin over here." So I went around to see it, and that became identified as dead dolphin number 49 at a time when dolphins and pelicans and manatees and fish were dying in the lagoon, as they still are, periodically. And so if I had time to paint the carcass of that dolphin, I would certainly do it. That's a picture we've never seen in our newspapers, barely seen. We should be confronted with those images. This is what we're doing here, but you don't see them. But I would paint them if I had the opportunity. I did a painting of a carcass of a sea turtle.
Yes.
This is part of our environment.
Yes, yeah. So you really don't want to hide anything from us, but also things that you can't put in or you can't see might become part of the title or part of the appreciation of the painting as you see it. And that's why you put it in such a prominent spot on the frame. Because otherwise it's a beautiful sort of evening look at Melbourne.
Yeah, it's a nice afternoon, late afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's also a contradiction, isn't it? And it adds something. It's adds some kind of interest, I think, to put that on there, and also by having that engraved on there, it's going to stay with the painting, I presume.
Yes.
I would hope.
Yes, I would think so too. Nowadays, we understand the value of the frame that the artist puts on the work, that it's a go with the painting and shouldn't be separated. Back in the day, they changed out frames like with the fashion, but not now, not with such an important aspect of the painting. Well, we're going to go from the heat of Florida to Alaska, and you first went to Alaska, what, in 1975? 1974.
Yes.
Well, I almost did my research just perfectly.
Yeah.
But let's look first at Kluane Lake at Spring Thaw in the Yukon. This is a 2010 painting, and it's only 10 by 22 inches, and it gets a whole mountain range and a part of a lake in it. And it gets a self-portrait in it. That's what I really like about this painting. It's up on the screen now.
Well, I was driving a car for a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, KJ Herman in Seattle, who has a salmon fishing boat in Kodiak.
Okay.
And he wanted to get this car up there. So I immediately volunteered to drive it up there for him. I've driven the highway a dozen times. I love the long drive, and particularly if I have time, I can stop and do some work along the way. Well, this is the third painting I've done at Kluane Lake, which is a huge lake in the Yukon Territory. And this was early spring when the ice is just beginning to melt around the edge of the lake. I was there for, I believe I was there for 6 days working on this painting.
Is that the one where you said you could see bears coming out of their caves and things in the spring, way away in the mountains?
Up behind me is a mountain where the grizzly bears den. That's correct.
Okay. Yeah.
And I did on one occasion, one spring, not this trip, not the trip that I did this painting. I always stop to look with binoculars across the mountain to see what I might see. There's a lot of sheep up there, or sometimes you see a moose down here at the lower. But I did on one occasion when there was still, and it was early spring in May when everything is starting to thaw. I saw the black hole in the side of the snow-covered mountain, and I could see the bear tracks coming out of there.
Oh my goodness.
So I followed the bear tracks, and a couple hundred yards away, here was the bear.
Oh my goodness.
He had just come out of that den, he or she.
Yeah.
I guess it was a he because I didn't see the cubs.
And looking pretty svelte after a long winter without anything to eat. Just
Well, he was a
sleeping.
long way up there yet, so.
Yeah.
But he was up, sooner or later, he'd be searching out little green sprouts to.
And things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't just eat salmon, they eat
Right.
everything they can get at different times of the year.
Correct, yeah.
That's pretty neat. Now, there's another painting that is similar to that from 2019. So this is 9 years later. It's Matanuska River and Crick.
Kinnick Glacier.
Okay. And it's a 10 by 20 inch painting. And tell us a little about that. There's a lot of people in this one.
And that's an interesting thing about this little painting, actually. This was in 2019, and I have a step van here, and I have a step van up in Alaska. So, but the step van I had in Alaska, I was having lots of problems with it, and there was a garage close to Palmer, and I was going back and forth to that garage, and right just a quarter mile away was a bridge over the Matanuska River, and was this view that is in this painting. I spent a lot of time at that garage, the step van did.
Yeah.
So I started, sooner or later, I started that painting. And that's right alongside an old highway, which is still in use, but it's not the main highway today to get from Anchorage to Palmer. There's a newer highway. But the old highway is still in use, and lots of people picnic and there's a bicycle trail there. They hike, they ride bikes, and they come to see this mighty Matanuska River, which is indeed a mighty river, and it's continually eroding the shoreline. People coming down and see what's going on.
Okay.
And eventually I started putting some of those people in there. So I think there's six adults with one little kid.
Yes. How did you, when it takes you so long to do that, did you do quick sketches and put them in later, or did you use a little photographic documentation to put them in?
Excellent question. All of the above.
Okay.
The girl on the bicycle, I took some, she was down there and she was really different from everybody else dressed up. And she was wearing shorts and she had this blonde hair and she was riding on this bicycle, and this was going to be really neat in there. So I went down there and I asked her if she moved back over there again, she was starting to leave, so I could take a couple of snapshots of her. And I wanted her to come back so I could do the work direct from her, but she didn't show up.
Yeah.
But another person riding a bicycle, I said, hey, I need to. So she stopped and she let me take a bunch of photographs of her, so I had something construct this bicycle because it's actually kind of it's got to be done just right or it looks so bad. Some of the people were from snapshots. There's a woman down there and she's got her hands up like this. That's from a quick sketch I did of her. Then there's a guy sitting down there. He's just looking out there. Another person there at this parking area. I got him to sit there, let me do a drawing of him. Nice. Which then he sent to his mother. I gave it to him after that.
That's nice.
But it allowed me to learn how to put this figure together in a believable manner, so I could paint it. I look at it like this: if I can't see it, I can't draw it. If I can't draw it, I cannot paint it. So that's the way the whole thing is constructed like that.
That's one of the neat things is that you have this wonderful scene with this big window in the sky in the middle between the clouds. It's really magnificent, and then you see all these people dressed really casually, like they're on a picnic or something. It somehow doesn't compute a little, but there they are, and you have to believe it because they're there.
It came up like that, and beautiful. That opening in the sky like you're talking about. And the light over there, over Connect Glacier, there's a lot of dust in the air at that time from the wind. And the dust is actually glacial dust.
Oh my.
A fine abrasive, actually.
Yes.
But it gave a kind of a yellow cast over there over the Connect River, which is over there. And it was just beautifully, the color was really good and rich. And if I had been there just for 2 days and did this thing from photographs, I would have missed much of that,
exactly.
Right?
So a lot of this is about the artist's experience. We couldn't see this if you hadn't taken the time to see it first.
And if I hadn't, I took the time, I had the time.
Yes.
Most fortunate.
Yes. Do we have time for one more?
Sure, let's do it.
Let's do one more, because here we're going back again into the main states, the contiguous states, and we're going to North Carolina, and we're going to look at View from Hanging Rock in North Carolina. This one was painted over the course of several years, in 1991, 1992, and 1999 for those finishing touches, I imagine, and it is 20 by 26 inches. So what compelled you to, I mean, you had to climb up there. It's a vast distance, you see, and all sorts of farms and roads and everything going on.
It's quite a view from up there. And I went up there and said, boy, I just really would like to do a painting from up here. And so I had the time and I had the energy, and so I did it. But climbing that, it was a steep climb to get up there. And I had a cargo pack, so I could carry my supplies on my back, and I carried the canvas in one hand.
Oh my.
And the good news is that with each day, the climb got easier instead of harder.
That's a plus, yeah.
That's a plus, and the weather was magnificent.
Oh yes.
And this is in late summer, and where there's a patch of brown field there, earlier had been green corn, so I was there from the time when there was corn in the field until the time they harvested the corn. And there's just beginning to be a little bit of coloration in the green.
Yes,
trees.
in the green trees, just a little bit of autumn coming in.
Yeah.
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 So these things happen, and there's also a couple of other people. You were not alone up there.
No, it's a very popular viewpoint. It's a popular place for people to climb up there and sit up there and eat their picnic lunch or something, or just come up and take a look.
And canoodle a little. Because there's actually two people there, and I thought that was only one person at first, but...
It's a boy and a girl.
Yeah.
And they're almost out of sight, but you can see them.
Yeah.
And they were there on one of those days, and so I thought that would be I put them in there.
And you had this hanging in New York, this painting, at one point.
It was I had a gallery in New York where this painting was.
And the gallery's name?
It was Hal Katzen. He was my first New York gallery.
Okay.
Peter Tatishev was my second New York gallery.
Okay.
Unfortunately, he's no longer alive, which is
Yeah.
how that all ended.
That all happens sometimes or another.
That's
yeah.
right. So Hal Katzen, though, showed that painting to a corporate buyer
Uh-huh.
who said, well, if those people weren't in that painting, he would buy it, but he didn't. But I think the people still should be in there.
I think so too. And you wouldn't even have taken them out if they had asked you. I'm sure
No,
you
that
wouldn't.
it'd be a completely different painting without that. I think it adds, that would be, I wouldn't want to take them out.
It's another feature for the viewer to discover and to say, oh, well, there's somebody else here.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm intruding in this big wide open space.
Yeah, if they went out there further, it'd be very scary because that is a big drop off.
Yeah, it actually is a hanging rock, and it just sticks, a lot of ledges, and they stick out, and you can sort of climb around and find your spot.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've reached our half hour, Spence.
Well.
And I could talk for another half hour, but I don't think,
Well, thank
I
you.
don't know if everybody could stand that.
And that's right, they get anxious.
Well, thanks for talking to us today.
Oh, my pleasure, thank you.
And I'll say so long and come back next month for another artist here at the Center for Spiritual Care with me, Ellen Fischer, and I believe we're going to have Zach Gruber next. But I don't know if he can top Spence here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for Art Talks at the Center for Spiritual Care with Ellen Fischer and Spence Guerin. To see Spence's show in person, call us at 772-567-1233. That's 772-567-1233. We'll set up your special appointment at your convenience. Our safety and yours, the center follows CDC guidelines. Masks are requested or required. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next month.